Hi, this is Matt, developer of Streets of Rogue 2. Thanks for checking out this devlog, and before I get into it, I just wanted to say a huge thanks to everybody for the really positive responses to our trailers and other materials and stuff we put out in this game so far. It means a lot to us, and be sure to give us a wish list on Steam if you haven't already. It really helps us out. There's a link below, and if you want to chat with us, check out our Discord. I am on there. I read all the suggestions and ideas and stuff, so drop in if you feel like it. And just FYI about what you're seeing, we're going to be playing mostly just like random footage of the game while I talk. This is very much a work in progress, particularly like any interface elements that you see, including some weird nonsense icons floating above NPCs. Probably lots of environmental content that's super repetitive and, repetitive buildings and stuff. So please, Discord members, especially, try not to analyze this to death because there's lots of gameplay and graphical and content stuff that's changing really rapidly right now. This is a raw snapshot of an in-development game. This is the sausage in the process of being made. So I was hesitant to even show this, but then I was like, screw it, it's probably fine. So enjoy. Anyways, the topic at hand. Streets of Rogue 2 is an open world game. And I want to answer some questions. Why is it an open world game? How am I able to pull that off, and what can you expect from the game's open world? Well, when I think about the sort of open world games that interest me, they tend to fall into a few categories. You have your AAA games like your Rockstar games, your Bethesda games, your Ubisoft games. Then you have survival crafting games like Minecraft or Valheim or V-Rising, which are oftentimes procedurally generated and created by smaller studios. And then you have your lo-fi sort of turn-based games, stuff like Dwarf Fortress's Adventure Mode, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, and the Unreal World. Games that are super open-ended, allow for tons of freedom, but also tend to scare people away because of the way they look, and they're super hardcore user interfaces. Now, Streets of Rogue 2 actually takes inspiration from all of these different types of games. I'm striving to give the game a lot of systemic depth, much like you see in the turn-based games that I mentioned, but I also want the game to be accessible, like the kind of thing that anybody can sit down and start messing with and have fun. That's been a key part of Streets of Rogue's design philosophy since the very beginning. Now, one thing that the survival crafting games tend to do really well is they allow you to jump in, start making progress really quickly, which is super satisfying, and is also something that large-scale AAA games tend to not do as well. As a person who is super busy, the prospect of starting a new game of Starfield or Cyberpunk or something like that can be pretty daunting, because I know that the character creation and tutorials and introductory stuff alone is probably going to be like a couple hours plus, and I have 2 kids and a job that keeps me up until 2 a.m., so it's not going to happen for a while. So basically, I wanted Streets of Rogue 2 to strive for the systemic complexity of a turn-based open-world roguelike, but also be really friendly and accessible, and also have a lot of the features that you expect to see in AAA open-world RPGs. And also it supports online and local co-op, and I'm designing and programming the whole thing myself. Now, that might sound a little bit overambitious, and generally speaking, if a solo developer announced that they were going to embark on a project like this, I'd probably be like, yeah, good luck with that. It's exactly the kind of thing that like a young, inexperienced game developer might try to do, and then very quickly realize that they've bitten off way more than they could chew, and maybe try something a little bit smaller. But my situation going into development on Streets of Rogue 2 was a bit unique in that Streets of Rogue 1 provided a really solid base for me to work from. Streets of Rogue 1 actually began development almost 10 years ago in late 2013, if you can believe it. The goal with that game was to make a fast-paced, easy-to-play, top-down roguelite with the emergent systems of an immersive sim like Deus Ex. And a lot of development time went toward just kind of making sure things worked properly. Because I tried to allow the player a lot of freedom, there were just loads and loads and loads of ways to break the game, and thanks to Steam Early Access and player feedback, I learned about almost all of them. And eventually, the game ended up becoming surprisingly unjanky. Now, part of why I was able to pull off Streets of Rogue 1 was because the spaces that the player has to traverse are relatively small. In typical roguelike fashion, you'd move from one short level to another. There wasn't much persistence beyond what you were carrying and the new skills that you'd acquired. The actual construction of the world accounted for a relatively small part of development. whereas the bulk of my time was spent on game mechanics. So when it came time to start working on a sequel, I figured there were a couple ways I could take it. Either I could keep a similar structure to the first game and just try to pile on the mechanical depth and create an even denser sort of roguelite, or alternatively I could go broader and expand outward and add this layer of macro scale complexity to complement the micro scale complexities of the first game. And between those two, it was actually a really easy choice. Because first off, I love open world games, and I also felt that the structure of Streets of Rogue 1 was a little limiting to me as a designer. I was actually looking through some old posts on the Streets of Rogue Steam forums from back in like 2016, and apparently I had ideas brewing in my head for an open world Streets of Rogue even back then. I mean, this is before the original game had come out even in early access. Just to be clear, from a programming standpoint, it's not a matter of just jamming my Streets of Rogue 1 content into a new open world structure. It's been way tougher than that, and even with all the work I did on the original game, it's been just a very, very, very intensive development cycle for the past few years. But I think it will be worth it. So what can you expect from the open world in Streets of Rogue 2? Well, first of all, the map is procedurally generated with handcrafted individual buildings and small locations. The map has big cities, small towns, forests, lakes, oceans, islands, and a big road system. And how big is the map? Well, I recently tried an experiment. I drove a car across the entire map, just like an empty map, straight shot horizontally, nothing in the way, and it took about 10 minutes. And if you just measure the area of the map, it ends up being somewhere around 10,000 times as big as a level in the original Streets of Rogue. Now bear in mind, I will probably have options in the game to change the map size as well, so you could make it smaller, maybe bigger, I'm not sure yet. The quickest way to traverse the world is by using vehicles, which include land and water-based vehicles. No airplanes, yet, we gotta see. There will be fast travel in some form. I haven't 100% settled on the mechanics of that just yet, but it is gonna happen. The whole world is streaming, so there's no load times or scene transitions except when you fast travel or you go into a dungeon or some other non-overworld area. And if you have more than one player, everybody can be in a totally different area of the world at the same time. There's no limitations there. Someone could be out riding a motorboat, and another player could be dungeon delving. It just doesn't really matter. And speaking of which, a quote-unquote dungeon in this game might actually take the form of anything from a cave to a high-rise building, where, like, for example, instead of just killing everybody, you can find different ways of stealthing or talking your way past security, that kind of thing. Now, the game world is persistent, so it's more like a Bethesda game than a GTA game in that regard. So, for example, if you drop an item somewhere, or if you kill somebody, and then you leave and you come back 3 days later, item's still going to be there, and the body's still going to be there. Although there are these things called butler bots, which you might remember from the first game. They work a little bit differently now. They come around every morning and they clean up dead bodies, amongst other things. They also perform investigations and stuff. But anyways, that's a gameplay thing. That's not really a technical limitation. So if they weren't around, then the bodies would just stay there forever, I guess. There's a full day-night cycle in place in the game, and the people in the world generally adhere to it. They have homes and jobs, and they will visit different venues in their leisure time. And if you want to have your own home, then yeah, you can build structures within the world. Eventually, I'd like to make it so that you can build entire towns and stuff like that, although it might be a while before I get the chance to actually make that happen. But even right now, it's possible to influence the world in a bunch of different ways and cause visible change to it. For example, if your actions led to mobsters gaining power in a city, you would start to see more mobsters walking around that city. Or if you were to destroy the machinery at a factory that produces FUD, like FUD is sort of the mystery meat of the Streets of Rogue universe, the price of FUD around the world might go up for a period of time because since you destroyed that machinery, the FUD is now more scarce. And that would be nice if you had like a bunch of FUD that you wanted to sell since the prices are higher. Now as for the permanence of the changes that you make to the world, like for example the broken walls stay broken forever, stuff like that, I actually get a lot of questions about that, and right now all I can say is it's still being worked out. I'm taking it on a case-by-case basis. Now one thing it is possible to do is if you generate a world and you play around in it for a while and then you decide you just want to play as a new character, you can take that new character to the existing world and everything will be just as you left it before. Or alternatively, you can bring an existing character to a newly generated world. We're planning to start the first pre-alpha playtest at some point in the near future. No concrete plans for now. We're going to start small and gradually invite groups of people to try out, different parts of the game and gather feedback. If you're interested and you want to get into this pool of potential participants for this, please sign up via the link below. Again, this is going to be a very, very early build, and not everybody who signed up is going to get a chance to play this right away, so don't get your hopes up too high. But it's an important step for us for the game, and we're looking forward to it. Happy holidays, everybody! Anyways, that's about all I got for you today. I will be doing more of these devlogs in the near future because I got a lot more to talk about, so stay tuned and bye for now.